guys, so we are going to start learning about conic sections, and I'll explain it once we start our notes here. But basically 4 different shapes we're going to be focused on, and we're going to start today with circles. As you're going through, if you copied my notes from the website, there is a little bit that I'm going to skip over just because we're not in school right now. So I'll explain as I go what I want you to do, what I want you to skip. Okay. So here are the 4 different types of conic sections that we're going to be going over. And as you can see, they're found by splitting up 2 cones in separate sections. So we're going to be starting today with circles. Okay, so the standard form equation of a circle is given there. So I want you to go ahead and copy that down. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. For circles, when you have this equation set up, you're always going to be adding right here. Okay. You have 2 things that you want to make note of also. The center of the circle is always equal to the point HK. So what you're going to do is just take the opposite sign, right, of whatever you have here and the opposite sign of here. And that's your center. The radius then is always just going to be the square root of whatever you have there. Here is a picture that kind of matches up with that. Like I said, you switch your signs, that gives you the center of HK, and then remember the radius is the distance from the center to the outside of the circle. So, first type of problems, it says find the center and the radius of the circle represented by the equations below. Give exact answers. So, the center for this one, again, I'm just going to switch my signs. So here it'd be a positive 4. Here, since I'm not adding or subtracting anything to the y, it's just going to be a 0 right there. Okay. For the radius, you always take the square root of whatever it's equal to, which gives us 4. Okay, similarly here for the center, again, switch your signs. So negative 2, positive 5. Radius is going to be the square root of 8, which I can simplify down to 2 root 2. Remember, do your little tree, simplify that down, you can end up taking a 2 out. Good. Next part, find the standard form of the equation of each circle described. So now it's working backwards. They give us the center and the radius. We need to find the equation. So we're going to set this up. It's always x, and then again you switch your sign here. So minus 1 squared, always a plus in the middle, and then y, switch my sign here. So plus 2 squared equals your radius squared, which is 3 squared. So that's 9. Okay, same type of thing here. Now, since this is at 0, I don't need to put x plus or minus 0. I'm just going to put the x squared. Okay, plus, over here we'll have y, and then switch our sign, minus 3 squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. Good. Next is graphing these. So with graphing, I usually like to write down each piece first. I like to write down what the center and the radius is. The center here, since I'm not adding or subtracting anything, is going to be at 0, 0. The radius is the square root of 4, which is 2. So I go ahead and put my point at 0, 0. That's not part of the circle, but it's going to help me because then I know that I'm going to move from here left, right, up, and down 2 units and make points there. Okay. Don't try and go diagonal because it's too hard, to figure out where 2 is diagonally. So just use those 4 points and then just draw the best circle that you can through those. And that's the graph. For the next one, so I'm going to write down the center. Switching my signs, my center is going to be at 1, negative 2. My radius is the square root of 9, which is 3. So I'm going to come over here, put my center at 1, negative 2, so put a dot there. And then again, I'm going to go left, right, up, and down 3 units. So 3, and then just draw my circle. Okay, so it's nice when they give it to us in standard form because it's very easy to graph from there. But if they don't, so the other type of form, so they're standard, the other type of form is general form. So go ahead and write this part down. When you see this type of form, technically the graph could look like different things, okay? It could be a circle, it could actually just be a single point, or the graph could be non-existent. And it depends on, like when you rewrite it in standard form, what you get on the right side of the equation. So we can tell it's a circle if it ends up looking like this in standard form. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals a positive number. If it ends up being a positive on the right side, then it's going to be a circle. If you get this set up, again, same thing here, but you get it set equal to 0 on the right side, then that's just going to be a single point, okay? It's like you find the center, and then it's just that dot because there is no radius. Last option here, if you end up with a negative number. That means that you can't even graph that point, right? The radius would be negative, which does not make sense. So then that graph is non-existent. You can't graph anything or plot anything, okay, for that one. So the way that you switch back and forth, it's called completing the square. So you want to switch from the general form to the standard form. First step is that your leading coefficient of x and y, the x squared and the y squared, has to be equal to 1. So we want to divide if necessary. Then you want to rewrite it, putting the x's together, the y's together, and then leave a space at the end to figure out what we're going to be adding. Complete the square and then write it in standard form. So it's just going to make more sense if I just go through these with you, okay? So the first thing we want to do is look at the x squareds and the y squareds. There is a 1 out in front of both of those, so we're good. We don't have to divide it all. So now my next step is I'm going to rewrite these, putting the x's together. So x squared plus 4x, and then I'm going to put a blank in here for the x's. Okay, same thing, group the y's. Plus the y squared minus the 8y plus blank. Then I'm going to go ahead and add that 44 over. Okay, so we've done this in the past. It's the completing the square. You're going to do it for the x's and the y's to figure out what needs to go in this blank and separately what needs to go in this blank. Okay, what you always use is b over 2 squared every single time. B is the number that just goes with the x. So for this one, it's going to be 4 over 2 squared. 4 over 2 is just 2 squared, and 2 squared is 4. So the 4 is what's going to go in the blank, but since I added it to one side, I have to add it to the other side as well. Okay, now we're going to repeat that process with the y's. So again, I'm going to do b over 2 squared. In this case, that's negative 8 over 2 squared, which would be negative 4 squared, which is 16. Okay, which means that the 16 is what I'm going to add here and on the right side as well, plus 16. And in fact, some people like to put the blanks on the right side just so that they don't forget to add that over, and you can do that as well. So when we do that, the whole point of doing that is so that we can write this trinomial as a binomial squared. Remember, you always use that simplified number right there. So this I can rewrite then as x plus 2 squared. Okay, plus, now I want to rewrite this part. Again, I'm going to be using that number there. So y minus 4 squared. Right? If you did magic x with either of these, you would get like what we just got, I promise. So we're not going to do that every time, but that's the whole point of completing the square. So we can write it now in standard form. So then on the right side, we just need to add those numbers together and we get 64. Okay, so that tells us that since this is positive, this is going to end up being a circle. Now this problem just wants us to rewrite it, and so we would be done here. If the question asked, you know, what's going on, is this a point, circle, or non-existent, we would say it's a circle. Good. So here, determine if it's a circle, a point, or non-existent. If it is a circle, name the center and the radius. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I need to get this in standard form. So x squared, y squared are already 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and start by grouping these. X squared minus 10x plus blank plus the y squared plus 2y plus blank. If I move that over, I actually get a negative 10 on the right side. Make that a little clearer. Okay. Go ahead and do completing the square again. You should get 25 that I'm going to add to both sides, so plus 25 plus 25. Over here, b over 2 squared would be 2 over 2 squared, which is just 1, so that's what I'm going to add to both sides. So when I rewrite this, I get x minus 5 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals, when I add those over, I'll get 16. Okay, so again, because that is positive, that means that this is going to be a circle. The center here, switch our signs, is 5, negative 1. The radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. Okay. Now here's one where we want to go ahead and divide first to get the x squared and the y squared to have a 1 out in front. So I'm just going to take this and divide all of these by 2. So I'll have x squared, and I'm going to go ahead and group them as well. So x squared plus the x there, plus blank, and then plus the y squared, dividing by 2, so minus 3y plus blank equals 45 over 2. Okay, after that I can, just keep going like normal. So this is going to be 1 over 2 squared, which would be 1/4. So that's what I'm going to add to both sides here. Over here, negative 3 over 2 squared would be positive 9/4. So that's what I'm going to add here. So it's a little weird, but I can still rewrite this. I'll have x plus the 1/2 squared plus y minus 3/2 squared equals, and then when I add those together on the right side, I end up getting 25. Now you can do that on your calculator, or you can get a common denominator. It wouldn't be hard to change this over here to 90 over 4 and then add those together, okay, to get the 25. So again, because it's positive, it's going to be a circle, right? Your center is at negative 1/2, positive 3/2. Your radius is the square root of 25, which is 5. Okay. Last one. This one is telling us that it's either a point or it's non-existent. It's saying it's not a circle, point, or non-existent. So I'm going to let you try and work through this one. I'm going to be writing it down. So when I'm done here, I end up with a negative 2 on the right side. Since that is negative, that means that this graph is non-existent. Remember, the only time that you would get a point is if you end up with a 0 over there. Okay. Then the last type of problem is we want to figure out how to find the equation of a circle when they give us two endpoints of the diameter. So there are going to be basically two steps here. First, we need to figure out where the center is. And we can find that because that's just going to be the midpoint of these 2 points, right? It's going to be right in the middle. Can't spell midpoint. Okay, so the midpoint formula. You average your x's, you average your y's. So x1 plus x2 over 2, and then y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay, so for us, that's going to be -3 plus 7 over 2, and then 4 plus 2 over 2, which gives us a midpoint of 2, 3. So that's the first half we need. The second half we need is the radius. For the radius, I think it's going to be easiest to use the distance formula. So the distance formula is, you take the square root of x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Okay, so we just need the radius, which is the distance from the center to one of the points. So we are going to use the center, which is what we just found, and then just one of the other 2 points. So I'll go ahead and use 7, too. Okay, so when I plug this in, I'm going to subtract my x's here. So we'll do 7 minus 2 squared plus, and then I need to do the y's. So 2 minus 3 squared, which gives me the square root of 25 plus 1, which is the square root of 26. So that right there is the radius. Okay. So then my last step to set up the equation, I just need to do this. X minus 2 squared, right? I'm going to switch my signs, plus y minus 3 squared equals, and it's always the radius squared, so you're going to take the square root of 26 and square it, which just gives us 26. And that's going to be our final answer. Okay. Okay, the last problem on your notes we are not going to do because we don't have the tools necessary, so just go ahead and skip that. Go ahead and look at my calendar that I posted on the website to get your homework assignment. Don't look at the bottom of these notes because I've changed it a little bit. All right, thanks guys.